Hello guys, my name is Lance/Buffy and we're back with the second out of part 6 for Roblox trading guide and how to trade. This video is going to be specifically on demand and rarity, two very well-known categories on the Roblox platform, and it is very important to talk about these two, mostly demand, not as much as rarity, but it's still a pretty good idea to talk about these two so we can learn about them and so you can potentially become a better Roblox trader. Let's get straight into the video. Alright guys, so let's first talk about demand, okay? Demand is a very simple concept. It is not hard to understand, and let me just give you my own definition of demand. Demand is the favorability or likeness of a Roblox Limited. And so that can be displayed with, any Roblox Limited. It's, very easy to tell whether or not an item is liked or if an item is disliked or not traded very well or whatnot. And there are many different factors that can, play into how good of an item is demanded or liked. For example, if an item does not sell very often, it will probably not have a great demand. If an item is traded very often, it could potentially mean that it's, very demanded, unless it's a very cheap limited. In that case, it doesn't really have demand and more just has a demand for purchase because of how cheap it is. Alright, so as you can see here, we have the Roblox catalog open, or the Rolling Mon's catalog I should say, and you have a few items here. So for example, this chair racing intern item right here, it's also known as Cry. This item has a very low demand because it's a rare. It does not have many copies, nor does it look that good on your avatar. Now it is favored by rare traders because this item happens to be rare, which is something we'll talk about in this video, but as an example, this is a pretty low demand item. Now over here we have Ice Valkyrie, which this item could be considered with an amazing demand or a very high demand. This item is, even though it's very expensive, around 300,000 Robux, this item is sold on average at least 1 to 2 times a day. Sometimes it might not sell because of, its high price. For a person to have this much Robux on them, it is not too uncommon, but it is not very common. And so this item is, though, traded a lot because it does happen to have over 500 premium copies. So obviously this thing will be in circulation a lot. So this is an example of an item that probably has a very high demand. And then if we look around a little bit more, we might see an item such as, what's an item we could point out? Probably this item right here, Agonizingly White Bucket. This item could probably be considered that it has a low demand. It's not, or a normal demand I should say. A normal demand, mainly because people actually like this Agonizingly White Bucket, and even though it doesn't have that many copies, people still do trade for it, and every so often it will sell, unlike, Chair Racing Intern. So for example, this will have normal demand. Another item that could be considered with normal demand is Green Sidewinder. Now, although it does not sell very often, it does go through trade circulation pretty often, so you could argue that this item has normal demand, but according to Romans it's a low demand. But like I said, I'm just trying to give you examples. Alright guys, I went down a little bit down the list to give you a few more examples of demand of some items. So example, if we pull up this Krabby Bunny cat, or cat I should say, this item has a very low demand. This item does not look very good, it does not sell very often, it's pretty expensive, and it generally people do not really care about this item too much. So this item probably has a very low demand, just simply because of how the item looks and how the favorability of it. If you scroll down a little bit more, you might find an item like Winter. Winter could be considered a normal demand item because people do occasionally buy it, and because it's circulation, people do trade it pretty often, and it doesn't seem to be too overly expensive, and actually looks like a pretty decent face. So this item probably has pretty normal demand. And then if we go up a little bit more, you might find an item like Bucket, which could be considered that has a high demand, or according to Rolling Mon's, a normal demand. But Bucket is pretty liked. People do like to wear Bucket, and it just generally looks like a really good item, plus it even has a value on it, so people will probably like this item a lot. So this is an example of probably a good high demand item, an item that people trade for. You could argue that with Green Band Top Hat, which also happens to be valued. So people will generally trade for these two items right here, Bucket and GBTH, because people like them a lot. People might occasionally trade for Winter, and you will probably never or rarely find anyone trading this Krabby Bunny cat just because of how random of an item this is, and generally no one would probably want to own/wear this. But yeah. Now, one thing I do want to talk about really quick, just so people don't get too confused, is what is a quote-unquote demand item. So when you're trading, you might have people walking around, they might be looking for demand items. Now, when someone says that they are quote-unquote looking for a demand item, they are looking for an item with good demand. They are not just looking for any demand, because every item on Roblox has a demand. It doesn't matter what kind of demand it is. It can be super low and bad, or it can be amazing. Every item on Roblox has a demand. Every limited has a demand. Even if they're not limited, they could have a demand. They just can't be traded though. But for example, if someone says that they're looking for demand, you can see right here in the trade ad, demand. So you can see here items like Void Star, Space Hare, Valkyrie Helm, Classic Fedora, Subarctic Commando, and bucket. Those are examples of demand items. As you can see right here, this person is offering himself demand items: Adderite antlers, GBTH, and legit fedora. These are all examples of demand items. So if for example I was looking for smaller demand items, I would be looking for these three right here. If I was looking for a little bit more expensive valued items, I'd be looking for something like BIH or black iron horns or G-Quatin or green quid of the night. And if I was looking for very expensive demand items, I would probably be looking for something like frozen horns, which is demand and it's pretty good, and also something like poison horns, or for example something like gold king of the night or G-Cotton, which is also a pretty expensive high demand item, good demand item, or Scotton, which is also a pretty expensive good demand item. But yeah, these are examples of demand items. If someone says that they're looking for demand, they're not looking for bad demand items such as this item like robot costume or proud knight. These are low demand limiteds, and this is not demand. It has a low demand, but that does not mean it's a demand item because they're not good demand. So I just wanted to clarify that in case you ever go walk around, trade, hang out, and you see someone that they're saying that they are looking for demand items. When they say that, they're probably looking for something valued and that sells and does well. Elf ears, for example, kawaii cat or scissors or G-Cotton, whatever these demand items are. If it's valued and people offer them a lot, it is probably a demand item. Let's continue. Alright guys, and the last thing I want to talk about in this trading guide video is something that as a new trader you might not see very often or go through very often until you become, a little bit more richer in the game, and those are rare items. So we have rares and semi-rares. So the definition of a rare is an item that has underneath 100 available copies. Now usually people say underneath 100 copies in total, or existing copies, I should say, but there are items such as, like, for example, like you have beach ball head, which is under 100 available copies, and it's not very traded very often, so this can be considered, a rare item, or something like Washington's hat, which has a decent amount underneath 100 available copies, which I consider a rare item. Same could be said for something like Hotspot, or maybe Green Gray's Galaxy, or even Robber Baron. I think Robber Baron might be hoarded, which is why it's not considered rare, or maybe even Galaxy Emperor, or this Iron Octopus. But yeah, these are rare items. Now, I also mentioned a semi-rare. A semi-rare is pretty much the same, except it is any item with underneath 200 available or existing non-terminated copies. So a semi-rare is not talked about very often. Semi-rares are not that great as of right now because of how the economy is going right now, but the main thing you'll probably want to focus on if you do get richer in the trading game is rare items. Now, rare items are not very profitable during inflation periods when a bunch of demand items are doing good. However, during deflation, rares are known to do pretty damn well because they take advantage of the fact that all these demand items are dying because these items are not demand. They have almost no copies, so people are not going to be selling them on the wrap, and therefore they're going to stay very stable. Now, during inflation, nobody cares about these rare items, so they're going to do bad as a result because people are rather trying to get their hands on demand items that will increase during deflation. But yeah, so as you can see, we have plenty of examples of rare items. So an example right here, we have Nth, which is also known as Enthroned Ruler of the Universe. It is a rare item. It has around 66 available copies and quite a decent amount of premium. But as you can see, most of these rares are pretty expensive. I mean, Enthroned Ruler of the Universe is worth at 120 value. That is pretty expensive. If you go down a bit, you might find this, Dreamwalker's Dagger worth at 80,000 Robux, and this item is actually a gear, believe it or not. It's selling for a very high price. It has a very low wrap too, which is a very common thing you might find with some of these rare items, that they have a very low wrap. As you can see, this item right here, Glorious Pink Party Queen, is valued at 75,000 Robux. It only has a wrap of 40,000. And you might continue on, you might see some outrageous rare items such as like this right here, Scythe Face, the sharpest one. This item is valued at 420,000 Robux, yet it only has a wrap of 60,000. Now, the reason is because of this is because, well, quite simply, it is a rare. It does not have many copies, and so as a result, people don't really sell it. And so as you can see, it's almost never sells, except this item, since it's so rare, people overpay a lot for it and becomes super expensive as a result, which is why some of these rares can do very good. So for example, if we go to Scythe Face, if you look at its graph real quick, you can see that this rare has done very well in the past, and a lot of these rares did very well. An example from like 2021 started at 70k and all the way up to 470 within the course of around 2 years, but it did very well. As you can see, this item gave people a lot of profit. So rare trading is one of the trading types I will be talking about in a future trading guide video, but this is an example of how rares can do very well. Now, also rares can do pretty bad, and there is a pretty good example of that. For example, let's look at something like what's a good example of a rare that's done very bad recently? Oh yes, Venom Shake is a classic example of rares that can do very bad. Sometimes things like horde releases can cause rare items like this to die, because most of these rare items, sometimes they have hordes, and that's what makes them super good. So as you can see, this item does have a horde by Bourgeois. This person has 20 venom shanks on him right now, but as you can see, this item used to be worth at 300,000 Robux, and after a horde got released, it got just straight up devalued, and when Rollimon began to revalue it, they revalued it at 40,000. Can you believe that? An item that used to be worth 300,000 Robux got devalued and dropped all the way down to 40,000. That is an absolute embarrassment to an item that is rare as Venom Shake, which is a pretty cool sword, by the way. But as you can see, Venom Shake did very well after that. You know, it started raising a little bit, dropped a little bit, raised, dropped a little bit, rose, and then all of a sudden people just started liking Venom Shake. It did really amazing. It went up to 330, basically a little bit above what it was worth in February 24th, 2019. But as you can see, these rare items are very unpredictable, and the only reason they can do good is because of hype, hordes, or just any other reason. But yeah, so those are rare items on Roblox. Like I said, if you're a new trader, you will likely not mess around with these items until you become, you know, more rich. I mean, the cheapest rares you might find are already pretty expensive. I mean, guitar glasses are worth 13,000 Robux, and then you have some other items that are already worth like 28,000, 30,000, 38,000. So rares are not very cheap on Roblox. You will probably not be able to find them that often in a game. However, if you do, and you do happen to be rich and you think you can make a good investment, go ahead and do it. Nobody's stopping you. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this trading guide video on demand and rarity. The next video I will be talking about will be on wrap, value, and sales. So we will be talking about in part 3 of 6 of the trading guide series. So go ahead and click on this video right here. That will go directly to that video, or you can go ahead and click on this playlist right here to see all of my other trading guide videos right there. But anyways, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you learned something new about demand or rarity, and I will see you guys later. Bye bye.